Welcome to the 365 Performance Show with your host, Scott Dillon.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a great week. So, I want you to have a think. Do you ever have days, or maybe it's a series of days, or maybe it can even be a week or a bunch of weeks, where you look at the way you live in your life, how you're acting, or the choices you're making, and you look back and you're like, what was I thinking? I'm sure as we get older, those occurrences, they probably happen a little bit less and less as we have our experiences and our regrets and feelings and our learnings from them. But I just wanted to be really open and honest with you today, because one of the things that I always found is if I was ever like reading a book or listening to a podcast or someone that was sharing a message, there was this tendency that a lot of the time I'd kind of put them on a pedestal, and I really hope that's definitely not something that any of you do here with me. That I just want to be really open and honest, because a lot of people can see me and think, Scott owns some gyms, he's quite fit and healthy and active, he must have his life in order. But let me tell you that it couldn't be further from the truth. So me being honest here is just another way to make sure we break that story down. So last Friday I went out. I had a course on for 3 days. It was quite intense. I was very drained by the end of it. And come Friday afternoon, I was wanting to catch up with a really great friend of mine. There was no real crazy plans. It was just catch up, have a beer, get a cheap dinner, and then head home. That actually didn't happen the way it was planned. It ended up being have lots of beers, lots of margaritas, a very big dinner, and not get home till quite late. And I drank way too much. I felt like rubbish the next day. I had a really important farewell at the gym for a coach, and while I turned up, I really wasn't present because I felt completely hungover and like I was dying. So, first of all, younger me, when I was 20, could have probably handled that, and I used to do that to myself every Friday and Saturday night for probably around 4 years. Thankfully now, that doesn't happen. That's probably the first time I've been hungover for around 3 years or so. But after it happened, and the next day, and the following couple of days after that, there were just these feelings of guilt, shame, and anger towards myself for the choices I made on the Friday, the way I sort of was acting on Saturday because I felt like rubbish, the weekend that I kind of wasted because I was just recovering, and just a bunch of like internal talk that made me feel like I wasn't really doing a good job living up to the standards that I set myself. But this is what would happen in the past, and I would be looking at the event that happened, e.g. getting drunk on a Friday night, as the thing that I would attach myself to, and I wouldn't question or look at the reasons why it happened in the first place. So hopefully this is a little bit clear, but if you think about ways that and choices that you make at times, like you might be the shopper. You'll go through phases when you buy and spend a whole heap of money shopping. Maybe you are the drinker when you go through a phase where you drink heaps relative to other times when you don't drink much at all. Maybe you're someone that doesn't watch that much TV, but every now and then you'll find yourself just sitting on a couch, like vegging out day after day after day. Or maybe when it comes to food, you might be someone that tries to, eat really healthy, or at least, eat moderately healthy to people around you. And you do that quite consistently for a few weeks, maybe even a month or so. But then all of a sudden you go into this dark little rabbit hole where you end up sedating yourself, eating a bunch of rubbish food for a couple of days, maybe weeks on end, and then you look back and like, crap, why did I do that? Maybe it's like you go play computer games for ages, you go into situations that force you to feel good or not think about the pressures or stresses that you might be entailing in life at the moment. So in the past, what would happen is I'd go out, I'd get drunk maybe and I'd be like, oh yeah, I shouldn't really do that. But I'd never actually look back and ask myself the question, well, why was it that event occurred then and it didn't happen, say, the week before or the week before that or the week before that? And when I began to do this, I began to recognize that there were always these things, these feelings, these things I needed to do with that I was sedating and pretending that didn't exist. Growing a business, life in general, tasks that we want to accomplish, there's pressure associated with that. And if we don't recognize and get clear on what those pressures are and how we feel towards them, we end up having these outlets and explosions like I did last Friday night, where we begin to go into this thing which I call our pit. And it's our place we go, it's the choices that we make that make us basically no longer feel for that short moment, temporarily make us feel good, but then we come out the other end and then we feel just as bad, if not worse, than we did at the start. So I want you to think right now in your life, what's your choice that you sometimes make that you end up regretting and recognizing that it's not really serving you? Might be the food thing, might be the alcohol piece, like myself. Maybe it's computer games or TV, shopping. What is that thing for you? The first step is just recognizing it, because once you begin to recognize it, your awareness increases and you begin to have this aha moment when you have the ability to look back and recognize when this happens, there might be some underlying feeling or stress or pressure that you're choosing to not recognize and deal with. For me, the main piece is because our business has grown so significantly over the past 4 to 5 months, it sounds good in theory. And it is. It's great to be able to service so many people, have them getting so much more greater results, all the friendships that are developing there, and just the way in general, the vibe of the two gyms and how it's challenging us. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's something that I'm completely grateful for. But from growth, there's a whole bunch of other pressures that are associated with that, like how are we going to service all the clients to the same high level? How are we going to deal with this challenge? And at times, it gets almost unbearable. And I had a bit of a breaking point last week. And instead of speaking up and sharing how I was really feeling about it, I internalized it all and created all these stories and things inside my head, like I'm not going to be able to sort this out, don't deserve this, I'm not good enough, all those self-limiting beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves when we end up not feeling the best. And then, what happens? I'm sick of feeling that way, then I'd be like, well, I'll have a drink, I'll have another drink, I'll have another drink, I'm feeling really good, I'll have another drink, I'll have another drink, and before you know it, you're half cut, you wake up the next morning feeling like rubbish, you feel twice as bad, and the issue and the challenges that you had to deal with during the week are still there, and nothing's happened with them. So this was like a good shift for me, because it allows me to actually recognize that the pressures that I'm under, I need to share and communicate with my team more, be aware of what's happening, and put my foot in the sand and be like, okay, that's no longer happening. But I want you to think back in the past with yourself when this has happened. Have you recognized and just gotten clear with how you're feeling, the stories you're telling yourself, and what those stories and feelings that you're no longer wanting to actually own up to and feel, how they're making you do these actions that don't serve you. That's one thing we help a lot of our clients with in one of our programs, but it's just something I want you to become aware of today. What's that thing? Because once you become aware of that thing, you're still possibly going to make bad choices in the future. I think we all are. But when you do make them choices, and you can look back and be like, you know what, I did that because of X, or I did that because of this, then all of a sudden we can begin to recognize how these things can impact us, and we can begin to make a change. Hope you have a great day. And if you need any help, just make sure you reach out to us at 365performance.com.au. Cheers.